The wind whispered through the branches as the rope groaned softly. Marcus Garvey Park, 1946. Time, 6:23 a.m. An elderly woman out walking her dog noticed something strange hanging from an old oak tree by the park's north entrance. She thought it might be clothes, maybe laundry tangled in the limbs, but the closer she got, the clearer it became, and the scream ripped from her throat before she could stop it. At 6:47 a.m., NYPD arrived on the scene. Detective Robert Walsh was the first to approach the tree. What he saw made him freeze. His breath hitched. His instincts screamed. This wasn't just an ordinary crime scene. No, this was deliberate, a message written in blood and rope, waiting for the city to look up and read it. A young black man, maybe 19 or 20, hung by a noose tied high to a heavy branch. His shoes dangled 3 feet above the ground. His neck twisted in a way that screamed he hadn't died quick. He wore a Columbia University sweatshirt, khakis, one shoe missing. His wrists were bruised and bloodied, rope burns carved into his skin. He'd fought 5 men against 1 teenager. On his chest was a crumpled note scrawled in jagged letters. "Collards, know your place." Walsh stood in the silence of the early Sunday morning, eyes scanning every corner of the empty park. The oak tree could be seen from 3 different streets. That wasn't an accident. The people responsible had wanted this to be witnessed, to cast fear like a shadow across Harlem. In New York, in 1946, in the North, a lynching had come home. The boy's wallet was still tucked in his pants. With unsteady fingers, Walsh pulled it free. A Columbia University student ID stared back at him. Name, Thomas Johnson. His heart sank. His face paled. Not him. Please, not him. His partner, Detective Sullivan, arrived. "Who is he?" Walsh's reply came as a whisper that ached with dread. "Thomas Johnson." "So we've got a name. Time to notify the family. His uncle's Bumpy Johnson." The 2 detectives didn't speak for several long seconds. The implications hung heavier than the body. Sullivan's gaze moved from the boy to the note to the brutality left on display. "What do we put in the report?" he asked, knowing full well what the truth was. Walsh looked down, unmoving. 20 years on the job meant he'd seen a lot, sworn to uphold law, justice, and the duty that came with the badge. But 5 white men had murdered a black kid, and no matter what proof he found, no matter how many names he wrote down, no jury would punish them. The system was built to crumble at moments like this. "Suicide," Walsh said at last. "But I said suicide," he repeated, this time firmer. "We write it up, file it, tell the family, and after that, we stay out of it." Sullivan's eyes narrowed. "You think Bumpy Johnson. I think those 5 just signed their own deaths, and the smartest thing we can do?" He paused. "Look away." Sullivan was silent, then nodded. "Suicide. Got it." They lowered Thomas Johnson from the tree, slid his body into the coroner's van, finished the paperwork, and waited for the silence to break. Thomas was 19, a freshman at Columbia, pre-law. He dreamed of becoming a civil rights attorney, of winning battles in courtrooms, not the streets. Brilliant, reserved, glasses too big for his face, a book always in his hand. Professors called his mind exceptional, the kind you don't see often. Thomas lived with his mother, Ruth Johnson, Bumpy's older sister, in a small apartment on 135th Street. Every Sunday at 6 a.m., without fail, he walked through Marcus Garvey Park on his way to Abyssinian Baptist Church, always the same time, always the same route. And someone had noticed. Someone had tracked his movements, waited, and chosen their moment carefully. The KKK in 1946 wasn't limited to the Deep South. They had secret chapters in northern cities, New York, Chicago, Boston. They met in basements and back rooms, hiding behind blue-collar jobs and clean-shaven smiles. In Harlem, a 15-man group held Friday night meetings in a warehouse on East 98th Street. By day, they were clerks, machinists, storekeepers. No one suspected them. But on September 13th, they picked 5 of their own for a mission. to send Harlem a message. One Harlem would never forget. Those men were Danny Morrison, Rick Sullivan, Lou Bennett, Frank Dorsey, and Charlie Ross. They didn't pick Thomas by accident. He was everything they hated: smart, visible, black, and rising. He wore his success like a target. On September 15th, 1946, just after dawn, those five waited in Marcus Garvey Park. At 6:05 a.m., Thomas entered the park, Bible in hand like always. But he never made it to church. They were waiting in the dark. No hoods. This wasn't a ritual. This was punishment. Thomas tried to escape. He spotted them and took off running. He maybe made it 20 feet before they brought him down. He fought hard. He was small, 5'7", 140, but he fought like hell. His glasses flew off. His Bible hit the grass. They pinned him. Danny pulled a rope from his coat pocket, already knotted. Thomas cried, begged them to stop. Charlie Ross froze for a second, clearly shaken. This wasn't justice, this was murder. But Danny threw the rope over a branch. The rest helped. Thomas kicked and gasped, clawing at the rope around his neck while 5 men held it firm. 4 minutes. That's how long it took him to die. It wasn't quick. It wasn't clean. It was slow, brutal, final. When it was over, they pinned a note to his shirt, collards, "Know your place." Then they vanished, back to their regular lives, their kids, their Sunday breakfasts. Certain the cops would ignore one more dead black boy. They had no idea who he was related to, or what came next. At exactly 7:12 a.m., Bumpy Johnson answered the call. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Boss, it's Thomas, Ruth's son. They found him this morning in Marcus Garvey Park. He's gone." Bumpy didn't speak, didn't even move, just held the phone. "Boss, how?" the voice pressed gently. Bumpy's voice came back flat, cold. "They're saying suicide." A pause then. "But boss, there was a note. KKK. Bumpy didn't respond. He hung up the receiver and sat still, his hand clenched around memory. He sat in that chair for 10 minutes, not blinking, not breathing, mentally walking through every moment, teaching Thomas chess when he was 8, seeing him in that cap and gown, driving him to Columbia, beaming with pride. And Ruth, how proud she was. Harlem's first lawyer in the family. Finally, Bumpy stood, reached for his coat. "I'm going to Ruth's," he said. There was no fire in his tone yet, just gravity dragging him forward. One man, already mourning, already burning. Ruth Johnson only lived 4 blocks away. When Bumpy walked in, she was curled on her couch. Neighbors gathered around her like insulation, but grief chewed through it all. There's no comfort for a mother after this. Eyes swollen, face hollow, she looked up and said, "They took my baby." Bumpy sat beside her silently, held her hand. "I know," her voice cracked. "Police said suicide. Said my boy did it himself." Bumpy didn't answer. "It wasn't suicide," she added. "Then what was it? Murder." Ruth started shaking. Bumpy wrapped an arm around her, letting her sob into his jacket. And as he held his sister, his heart breaking, he felt something else rise inside him. Something darker, deeper. He had run Harlem for 2 decades, commanded armies of men, but right now, he had never felt more powerless. His nephew was gone. No amount of money or muscle could bring Thomas back. But maybe someone could pay for it. Maybe Harlem could send a message of its own. When Ruth's sobs subsided, Bumpy finally spoke. His voice was calm, final. "I'm going to handle it." "Handle what?" "The ones who did this." Ruth looked at him, eyes bloodshot but focused. "Will it bring Thomas back?" "No." "Then why?" "Because it's justice. Because Harlem needs to know this ends now. No more sons hung from trees in the middle of our parks." She stared at him in silence. Finally, she nodded once. "Then make them understand. Make them feel what I feel." "I will," he said. At exactly 9 a.m., Bumpy stood under that same tree in Marcus Garvey Park. Police had been there, taken the body down, renewed the rope. But they'd missed the small things. Bumpy didn't. 5 cigarette butts near the base of the trunk, all different brands. Men killing time. He collected them, Nearby, 5 footprints in the dirt, work boots widespread. Factory shoes. Then he spotted it, a single button, ripped during the fight, standard blue-collar uniform. And lastly, a half-burned matchbook, Ollie's Tavern, East 96th. Bumpy pocketed everything, every trace of carelessness they left behind. Then he began searching the park itself, moving methodically, scanning the benches, the bushes, the entrance paths. He halted near the north gate when he spotted an old figure slumped on a bench. Curtis, the kind of man Harlem walked past daily, invisible, homeless, but eyes like his always saw things. Bumpy approached quietly, sat beside him. Curtis. The man twitched. "Mr. Motter. Johnson, I don't want no trouble." "You won't get trouble," Bumpy said softly. "You'll get protection. And money. Just tell me what you saw." Curtis glanced around, nervous, then leaned in closer. 5 white boys. Came round 5:30 this morning. Sat there smoking, talking loud. Laughing 'bout teaching some fancy Columbia kid a lesson. Bumpy's eyes didn't blink. Catch a name? Just one. Tall one. Dark hair. They called him Danny. Last name, didn't catch it. But they mentioned celebratin'. Allie's Tavern. Said they always went there, after. Without a word, Bumpy handed him $200. "You saw nothing. You weren't here." Curtis nodded quickly. The bill's gone before they touched the light. He disappeared down the street. Bumpy turned, heading back to his office. He made only one call. Joey O'Brien, a bartender who owed him. Ollie's Tavern, this morning. Drunk, loud, 5 white guys. Find out who they were. 3 hours later, the call came back. Got him. Came in around 7:30 bragging. Names: Danny Morrison, Rick Sullivan, Lou Bennett, Frank Dorsey, Charlie Ross. Joey continued. Regulars. Come in every other Friday. Meet in the back room with about 10 others. Real low-key. Bumpy scribbled down the names, silent. My boss says it's some kind of club. Bumpy's eyes narrowed. What kind? Joey's voice lowered. The kind that wears hoods, if you catch my drift. Bumpy caught it. Thanks, Joey. You've paid your debt. By the same night, Bumpy had 5 complete files where they ate, slept, worked, hide. Nothing left unknown. He called in 4 men, his tightest circle, the ones who'd walked with him through darkness. Illinois Gordon, Willie Lee, James Quick, Jackson, Marcus Cole. These weren't just friends, they were brothers. Bumpy looked each man in the eye and spoke low. These 5 lynched Thomas. In 7 days, I want 5 answers, 1 for each name. They don't get to fade. They don't get to forget. He handed them folders, photos, maps. Afterward, we erase the whole cell. Every last Klan rat in Harlem disappears. No more terror in Harlem, Bumpy continued. They thought they could import fear from the South and scare us. He shook his head. We teach them better. Each man nodded. No words needed. They'd all known Thomas. They watched him grow. This wasn't revenge. This was blood. One more thing, Bumpy added before they left. Document everything. Every hit, every file, every photo, proof of what they did. Because when anyone asks why this had to happen, we're going to show them everything. Danny Morrison worked in the Bronx, fixing engines, arms always grease-stained. He lived alone in a run-down house with a big garage out back. On the second night, September 17th, 8:00 p.m., he was inside that garage, dirty elbows deep into a carburetor, oblivious. He never heard them come in. 3 figures moved like ghosts. Before Danny could even look up, a hand clamped over his mouth. An arm twisted him backward. He struggled hard. Tough guy. Mechanic hands. But he never stood a chance. They tied his hands behind his back, same type of rope he'd used on Thomas. Then Willie Lee tossed another rope over the ceiling beam. When Danny saw it, his whole face collapsed. He shook his head, screamed through the gag, begged silently. Willie looked him dead in the eyes. You know what this is. You know why we're here. The noose dropped around his neck, and they hoisted, slow, measured, letting him feel every inch of suffering, every pull of the cord. For 30 seconds, Danny fought for air, then they dropped him. He gasped, choked, crying, thinking it might be mercy. Then they pulled him back up. 3 times they did this. No words, no noise, just the rope and his choking. On the 4th time, they let him hang until nothing moved. Then they cleaned the room, set up a camera, took pictures, proof. His wife found him the next evening at 600 p.m., still swinging, pinned to his chest, 1 down, 4 to go. You knew your place. Now you're in it. Rick Sullivan took the news hard. Once he heard what happened to Danny, he stopped smiling, started locking every window, watched shadows. But he still had to work, still had a job at the factory, still had to go home. On September 18th, he came home like always, around 5:30 p.m., plopped down in his garage to fix the lawnmower. He didn't notice the faint smell of gasoline, didn't see the window behind him. His usual emergency exit was now nailed shut from the outside. Rick hummed to himself while he worked, wiping sweat from his brow. 20 minutes passed before he heard something, barely a sound, liquid dripping, spreading across concrete. He turned and saw his gas can overturned. He hadn't touched it. That's when panic set in. He bolted for the garage door, but the handle wouldn't move. Locked. Eyes wide, he spun to the side window, yanked at it desperately. Nothing. Nailed shut. That's when he saw the flicker. A lit match slid through the mail slot. Rick screamed as fire ignited instantly. Flames raced over the floor toward him. He charged the door, slammed into it. Once, twice, the third hit splintered the wood, and he tumbled into the driveway on fire. Neighbors ran out, beat at the flames with jackets and blankets. Paramedics arrived. Rick survived, but barely. 60% of his body burned to the bone. His face melted beyond recognition. He'd live, but a ghost of who he was. The fire crew found a note on the mailbox, 2 down, 3 to go. Felt the fire? So did Thomas. Lou Bennett had always felt safe in the woods. Hunting, camping. It was his way to escape the city when life got loud. So when Danny and Rick were taken down and paranoia crept in, he told his wife he was heading upstate for peace. He didn't know Marcus Cole and Quick Jackson had been tracking him for days, knew his vehicle, knew his route. On September 19th, Lou drove 3 hours north, parked near an empty trailhead, and vanished into forest. He walked for an hour under the tree canopy, breathing easier, and then he heard it. Footsteps behind him. Quiet, distant, but footsteps. He spun around. Nothing. He picked up the pace. So did they. The footsteps adjusted to his rhythm. Then came a voice echoing through the woods. Lou. He froze. Lou Bennett. It wasn't human. It came from nowhere, from everywhere. You helped kill Thomas Johnson. Lou started running, crashing through brush, abandoning the trail as panic overtook him. For 3 whole days, Lou wandered through thick wilderness. Marcus and Quick kept their distance, their presence felt but never seen. They whispered through the trees, broke branches nearby, left signs, moved shadows. Whenever Lou thought he could sleep, a whisper taunted him awake. When he tried to drink, something moved. He wasn't allowed peace, only fear. On day 3, they found him, crying, mumbling, talking to trees. He had no injuries, just madness. In one hand, clutched tight, 3 down, 2 to go. You hunted him. Now you know prey. Frank Dorsey was unraveling. 3 of his closest friends wrecked in under a week. He packed up his family, got them to a hotel, thought maybe distance would shield him. But Illinois Gordon had been watching, waiting. On the 6th night, September 20th, while Frank slept soundly in that quiet hotel, his real home was consumed by fire. Gasoline soaked the outer walls, windows smashed so flames could roar through. By the time fire trucks arrived, it was more ash than house. They found nothing intact. Every photo of his kids, every piece of his home life, gone. Erased. Frank stood outside the charred ruins with nothing left but ashes sticking to his shoes. The fire chief approached, hat in hand. "Mr. Dorsey, this wasn't an accident. This was intentional, expert work. Whoever did this wanted it complete. Frank just nodded slowly. On the mailbox, untouched by flame, someone had left a note. 4 down, 1 to go. You destroyed a family's future. Now you feel what loss is. Charlie Ross didn't need anyone to warn him. He already knew. 4 men down in 6 days? That left only 1, and his own nightmares were turning real. September 21st, 5:30 a.m. He couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his keys and sped off to the precinct, terrified but ready to confess. Prison, anything, had to be safer than Harlem's streets. But he didn't notice the vehicle shadowing him, didn't see it pull closer, box him in, stop him just 3 blocks from the station. Illinois Gordon stepped out and tapped his window. Charlie trembled as he looked up. His face went pale the moment he recognized him. Get out of the car, Charlie. Please, I was going to turn myself in, I'll confess. Out, Illinois repeated. Charlie obeyed, weak in the knees. It wasn't supposed to happen. Danny made us. Danny's dead. I know. Please, I'll leave town, I swear. Illinois pulled out a picture of Thomas in his Columbia sweatshirt. That boy was 19, wanted to be a lawyer. You killed him. Charlie cried openly. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Illinois said, stepping closer. Here's how it's going to go. You're not running. You're not getting arrested. You're going to that warehouse on 98th. You're going to talk to the others. Tonight at 9 p.m., all 15 of you will meet. You'll take a vote. Walk away from Harlem forever, or burn with it. Charlie shook his head. They won't leave. Some want to fight. Let them. If they stay, that building becomes an oven. Illinois slipped the photo of Thomas back into his pocket. This is your choice, Charlie. Convince them, or join them in the ashes. But either way, by nightfall, Harlem decides. He didn't wait for an answer, just turned, climbed into his car, and drove off into the distance. Charlie stood frozen in the street for a full 10 minutes, hands trembling in the dawn. Then he got back in his car and headed to the warehouse. The clock was ticking. At exactly 9 p.m., 15 men gathered inside the warehouse on East 98th, the full clan cell, all faces familiar to Charlie. He stood in front of them, barely holding it together, voice cracking as he told the truth. What happened to Danny? What was left of Rick? What the woods took from Lou? What fire took from Frank? And what would happen tonight? We've been warned, disband or burn. Murmurs erupted. Some laughed, others turned pale. All listened. Harlem was speaking tonight. They're bluffing, someone said. 1 gangster against 15 of us? But not everyone laughed. Someone else whispered, 5 of us destroyed in 6 days. Maybe we should listen. What, run? Another sneered. We're clan. We don't back down. Voices started clashing, the room descending into argument. Men shouted, threw insults, pounded fists. Charlie finally called for a vote. Stay or leave. 10 voted to stay, to fight, including Charlie. Walked out immediately. You're making a mistake, Charlie warned. They're coming. A reply came cold. Let them. Charlie didn't wait. He drove straight to the bus station, a bag already packed in his trunk. He wouldn't step foot in Harlem again. Across the street from the warehouse, in the darkness, Bumpy stood with his 4 men. They watched 5 leave, counted. 15 entered, Illinois said, voice low. 5 left. Bumpy gave a slow nod. Then 10 burn. The wind shifted. The warehouse lights flickered. The city had no idea that in less than 2 hours the streets would remember fire. At 11:45 p.m., the attack began. Willie Lee and Quick Jackson moved first, circling to opposite ends of the building. Each carried 3 glass Molotovs filled to the top. Marcus Cole slid around the back to block the exit. Illinois took position at the front. Bumpy stood still across the street, hands in his pockets, eyes sharp. At 11:47 p.m., the first bottle crashed through a window, then a second, then a third, 6 total bottles. Gasoline and flame met the air together. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Flames licked the walls, windows shattered from inside. Men screamed, pounded the doors. The front entrance wouldn't budge. Illinois had chained it from the outside. The back door creaked open, and 3 men ran out, blistered, burned, choking. Marcus let them go. Not every punishment meant death. Sometimes survival hurt more. Inside, the fire fed like it had waited its whole life. 7 men never made it out. 7 bodies burned down to silence. The official fire department report was brief: accidental fire, faulty storage of flammable liquids, possible illegal alcohol production. The NYPD's investigation lasted just 48 hours before closing the file permanently. No suspects, no questions, no claims. Detective Walsh scanned the final report and slid it into the bottom drawer of his cabinet. A note in the margin: closed. He never spoke of it again. By the morning of September 23rd, the Klan's reach in Harlem was not only broken, it was buried. 5 men had laid their hands on Thomas Johnson. Danny Morrison, dead, hanging in his own garage. Rick Sullivan, alive but disfigured, broken, a shadow. Lou Bennett, mind destroyed, lost inside a mental ward. Frank Dorsey, houseless, a life burned to ash. Charlie Ross, gone, disappeared across state lines. The remaining 10 who stayed behind, 7 died that night. The other 3 stumbled away scarred and scared. By sunrise, Harlem's message was carved in flame: "You don't come for our children." The rest of the Klan members in New York got the message loud and clear. Those who hadn't shown up that night vanished fast. They burned their robes, destroyed any records, fled the city, or melted quietly into everyday life, pretending none of it ever happened. The cell on East 98th was no more. There was no ceremony, just silence. But those streets whispered warnings for years. Harlem had answered terror, not with petitions, but with reckoning. No second chances, no more lynchings. Over 3,000 people came to Thomas Johnson's funeral at Abyssinian Baptist Church. Not one talked above a whisper. The wounds were too fresh. The casket was closed. Ruth insisted. She didn't want them to see what had been done to her boy. She wanted them to carry the memory of his smile, his glasses, his books. Bumpy stood beside her the whole time, unmoving, silent, his face unreadable, but his eyes carried a weight that silence couldn't hide. Harlem had listened. As Thomas's casket was lowered into the earth, Bumpy stepped forward and placed something on top: a photograph of his nephew, dressed in his Columbia sweatshirt, smiling with a law book in hand. Beneath it, 5 more photographs: Danny Morrison's lifeless body in his garage, Rick Sullivan's scorched face, Lou Bennett being carried from the forest, Frank Dorsey's house left in cinders, the warehouse engulfed in flame. Tucked underneath was a note: "Thomas, they paid. All of them. Harlem delivered justice. Rest now. Your mom is safe. We're safe. I promise, Uncle Bumpy." Ruth saw the photos and laid her hand softly against Bumpy's arm. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over," he said. "Did they?" She hesitated. "Did they feel it? Did they feel what I felt?" Bumpy looked her in the eyes. "Every single one of them understands loss now, pain, the kind that keeps you up at night." She nodded, slow and firm, then stepped to the casket and placed a single flower. "My son wanted to be a lawyer. He wanted to fight the system the right way." "I know," Bumpy answered, "but the system didn't protect him. It didn't even try." Ruth's eyes brimmed with quiet fire. "So you became the system." Bumpy didn't respond right away, just looked out across the sea of mourners. Finally he said, "Yes." "Thank you," she whispered. They stood together as the final prayers were said, their feet rooted in sorrow, their hearts still burning. Harlem hadn't just lost a boy. Harlem had lost what could have been. But it had also sent a message: never again. In 1963, 17 years later, a reporter came asking questions. "Mr. Johnson, people still talk about what happened in September '46. 12 men, all allegedly linked to your nephew's death. Some say you were behind it, that you carried out your own kind of justice. Is it true?" Bumpy was 61 now, still sharp, still feared, but tired in ways the young couldn't understand. He looked up. My nephew wanted justice the right way. Courtrooms, judges, the law. He believed in it. And you? The reporter pressed. I believed in it too, Bumpy said. Until the day that system told us Thomas lynched himself. Until the cops closed the case and called hate a misunderstanding. That day, the law failed. And when the law fails, someone else steps in. The reporter leaned in. So you took justice into your own hands? Bumpy didn't blink. I didn't take anything. Justice was owed. The courts wouldn't deliver it. So something older did. But doesn't that make you as bad as, the reporter began. Bumpy's voice sliced through. As bad as who? The men who lynched a child for being smart and black? The cops who helped cover it up? Or the system that's been turning its back on our people since this country started? Silence filled the room. You want to ask me if I regret it? Bumpy continued. I regret it was necessary. I regret that in '46, fresh off a war against fascism, we still had terror here at home. I regret that my nephew gave his faith to a system that left him hanging from a tree. His voice softened just slightly. But those men? They got what they gave. They ended a life, so theirs ended too. They destroyed a future, so their future burned with them. That's not revenge. That's balance. Bumpy stood from his chair. The conversation, done. Then at the door, he stopped. You know why the KKK never came back to Harlem after 1946? The reporter didn't answer. Because terror only fears one thing. Certainty, Bumpy continued. The certainty that harm will be answered, not in court, not with fines, but with reckoning. That's not me being criminal. That's me being what the law should have been. The reporter never released the interview, but the story outlived him. It spread across Harlem through whispers and warnings, a promise disguised as legend. You come for Harlem's children. Harlem comes for you. Not with speeches, not with lawyers, but with something final. Thomas Johnson never got to be a lawyer, never cross-examined a witness, never stood in front of a jury. But in death, his name became a verdict. The 5 who murdered him and the 10 who harbored them discovered what justice looks like when no one else will deliver it. Thomas deserved a future. When that was stolen, his uncle made sure no more were taken. 7 days, 12 men. One lesson carved into Harlem's soul. We protect our own. If this story made you see justice in a new light, ask yourself, what happens when the courts don't answer? What do you do when they call a lynching a suicide? Drop a comment. Was this right? Was it revenge? Or was it something necessary? There's a thin line between the two, and sometimes communities cross it not because they want to, but because no one else will. Remember Thomas Johnson, 1927 to 1946, the lawyer Harlem never got. The reason no white hoods returned.